For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and you're watching our weekly flagship show, The Talking Point. It's great to have from India's capital, Ambassador G Parthasarathy. He was India's former High Commissioner to Pakistan. Ambassador Parthasarathy, good to see you, even though it's online after quite a while.
Yeah, good to be back here with you.
Thanks so much, sir. And also from Washington, D.C., we're joined by Shuja Nawaz. He's an author of two well-acclaimed books. He's also a distinguished fellow with the South Asia Center at the Atlantic Council. Mr. Nawaz, good to have you back. Congratulations. Since we last talked on StratNews Global, there's another book out.
Thank you so much, Amitabh. It's good to be with you.
And again, from the capital, someone who's just stepped out of an ORF meeting, I think, senior fellow and keen Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and the whole region watcher, Sushant, Sareen. Welcome back to StratNews.
Thanks, Amitabh, for having me over.
We're looking at where India and Pakistan are going in the current geopolitical milieu. But before I come to all three of my panelists, just want to play out what the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Amitabh had to say yesterday when he was asked about whether there were any talks with Pakistan.
The Backchannel talks between India and Pakistan brokered by UAE included a commitment on talks with Kashmiri leaders by the Indian government. Is this true?
Regarding developments in Jammu and Kashmir, this is clearly an internal matter for India. As far as our bilateral relations with Pakistan are concerned, our stand is well known. We desire normal relations with all our neighbors, including Pakistan. Pakistan must work towards creating a conducive atmosphere, including by taking credible, verifiable, and irreversible actions to not allow any territory under its control to be used for cross-border terrorism against India in any manner.
Well, on that note, the FATF has announced nothing unexpected that Pakistan will remain on the grey list. Ambassador Parthasarathy, the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, also in a press conference when he was talking about the all-party Jammu and Kashmir meeting that the Prime Minister held yesterday, said that there are no back-channel talks. There's only intelligence of both sides that's in touch with each other on regional issues. What do you really think is happening, considering the ceasefires are holding since the 25th of February? There seems to be some kind of lessening of rhetoric from the Pakistani side as well, but the core issues still remain.
No, let's look at it this way, that there is a back channel. Now, in India, the back channel will naturally report to the Prime Minister, and the External Affairs Minister will be kept in the picture. In Pakistan, if it is an ISI run by back channel, the amount of information which will reach the civilian setup is questionable, because there are some things they keep to themselves. So as far as we are concerned, we needed an effective back channel that worked insofar as terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir and infiltration across the border is concerned. We will have to wait through this summer to see if that is kept, what has been promised. I think it will. But the important thing is that what Qureshi has said on the talks yesterday on Jammu and Kashmir, in most other countries, they have been regarded as path-breaking. The fact that the Prime Minister of India could invite every single political leader in Jammu and Kashmir here for a dialogue, the fact that both sides have gone back satisfied with what transpired, makes it very clear that the issue of Article 370 is at the moment below the horizon, whereas other talks leading to elections and so on are going to be the focus of attention. Again, this is fine with us, and we should stick for it, because I think what has been achieved now is a dialogue, despite what the earlier demands of the others were. Most important, I am happy that the rogues of the Hurriyat are not included. They were totally in the pay of Pakistan. And we are having a dialogue with recognized political parties, including Indian national parties. So good for us. It's a process which is going to take time. And it's going to start by looking at the elections, the setup of constituencies, and on matters democratic.
Shuja Nawaz, your take. Ashish Matthew, one of our viewers, is asking, what is the equation with Pakistan now? I should be asking you the reverse. But go ahead, Mr. Nawaz.
It depends on what aspect of Pakistan you want me to talk about.
We're just talking about, how there seem to be some kind of movement from both sides. If there are back channel talks as well, where is that leading?
I think it's important to put back channel talks in perspective, and Ambassador Parthasarathy probably understands this much better than I do, because he served in the diplomatic corps. And this is that back channel talks only work when there is a reasonable consensus within each country on what they want to achieve. And then you test out various ideas and theories and try and see what's the best way of bringing them together, so that when you do have open formal discussions between the two authorities, the Indian and Pakistani authorities in this case, that there's already some preparation that's been done. So these are essentially the Sherpas preparing for the summit. Now, what is really heartening, and I think this has been also mentioned in some of the recent pronouncements by the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. He had a session with a couple of editorial writers from the New York Times also recently, that there is a desire to try and return to this quote-unquote normal relationship with India. Frankly, I don't know how one defines a normal relationship between India and Pakistan because of the unceasing hostility that has been so pervasive. But a normal relationship meaning that there's connectivity, the borders are open, trade begins, and they start looking at common problems and issues, something that I've personally been for and fighting for well over a decade. And Ambassador Parthasarathy knows that. So I think there is a desire, and it is forced on both India and Pakistan by economic issues. And the COVID pandemic has exacerbated the situation, so that if the two prime ministers are to serve their people well, then they should try and find some way of getting some economic benefit out of talking to each other, so that you're not simply talking for the sake of talking.
Sushant, Sareen, you want to step in there? The FATF ruling, again, no surprise. But then the other message that went out yesterday at the SEO NSA's meeting, where Mr. Doval raises JEM, LET, says there should be a roadmap even within the SEO. So, yes, you have to talk at some point of time. You can't not talk to Pakistan forever. You're even talking to China. But what's your take?
It's not a question of you have to talk to them or not talk to them. I think talks never really ceased, whether they were happening on the back channel, whether they were happening through the diplomatic channels. Yes, the political level talks have been in a bit of a limbo for some time. But look, frankly speaking, as someone who actually believed at one point of time that things can be worked out between the two countries, I'm extremely pessimistic. I don't see anything happen, at least in my lifetime, and I hope to live for a fairly long time. Because I really don't see. It's okay for diplomatic purposes. People say all sorts of nice things. Now, Mr. Nawaz is talking about Imran Khan saying certain things to the journalists whom he met. But what was the subtext of whatever he said? He has a maximalist position. and on that, it's a deal breaker. There is no way we can go forward. The kind of abusive language which he has used, I don't see how, at least under this prime minister or this government, any forward movement with these guys is possible. Now, yes, there is some kind of a back channel talks taking place. Now, whether this is purely and I suspect it is, it's purely a sort of a tactical pause. And I agree with Mr. Nawaz on that count, that both sides have their own compulsions. The Pakistanis have, the western borders, which are likely to be somewhat disturbed going forward. At least nobody knows how things are likely to settle down out there. They don't want to be caught in a situation where the eastern border and the western border both heat up. So probably they want to turn their focus out there. We have our own economic issues. We have our own political issues. And we have, our problems with China. So we would like to cool our western borders. But has that changed the larger dynamic of the relationship between the two countries? Is there any telltale sign which leads anybody to believe that, yes, now a sort of paradigm shift is starting to take place, where all the things that we have seen in the past are likely to be only in the past, and as General Bajwa said, that we are going to bury the past and move forward. You can't bury the past if you are going to continue to dig out corpses from the past, which is what keeps happening all the time. So honestly speaking, I don't see the Indo-Pak track go anywhere. I think this tactical pause will stay, perhaps for a few months, maybe a couple of years. And I think either side is going to be preparing for when this tactical pause ends and the next round of bloodletting or firing or whatever you want to call it commences. So frankly speaking, I'm extremely pessimistic.
Extremely pessimistic. Up to a couple of years, you say. And to illustrate that, I will play out another soundbite from, again, Mr. Qureshi. This is an interview that was given to Tolo News, Afghan private news station, which StratNews has tied up with. It's not just what Mr. Qureshi says, it's how he says it, it's his expressions, and the brilliant Lotfullah Najifzada, who is the head of Tolo News, who was questioning him. Just listen in. It's slightly long, but you won't want to miss it.
To the Indian influence in Afghanistan, you somehow referred to it. How many Indian consulates are in Afghanistan?
Well, on paper, perhaps 4.
Unofficially?
You would know better.
You doubt it? You doubt what's on paper?
No, I'm saying we feel that at times we feel that you don't share a border with India. Obviously, you have sovereign relations and you have bilateral relations, and you have every right to have sovereign and bilateral relations with India. You trade with India. They come and carry out development work there. That's fine. That's completely fine with us. But at times we feel that their presence is perhaps larger than it ought to be, because they're not, they don't share a border with you.
Does it bother you that they have?
If they use your soil against us, it bothers me.
Are they?
Yes, they are.
How?
How? By carrying out terrorist activities. We have intelligence, we have information, we have shared that, and we have a very famous person who is admitted to carrying out subversive activities, terrorist activities in Pakistan, in Balochistan.
One would also raise the issue of Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. Are they Pakistan-based terrorist groups?
Well, frankly, our government is very clear. We are supporting no terrorist group. We are supporting no terrorist group. Even with India, when
Maybe you don't recognize them as terrorists.
Well, don't put words into my mouth. I can speak for myself. But with India, we wanted reconciliation. And the minute Prime Minister Imran Khan came into office, he said, you take one step towards peace, we will take 2. Unfortunately, They did not reciprocate. Unfortunately, they took steps and measures that vitiated the climate. Despite that, we think that the situation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a political situation. It is being mishandled. India today, with the measures of 5th of August 2019, has alienated the Kashmiris further. They have not helped themselves. And today, the situation over there is very delicate and simmering.
Ambassador Parthasarathy, Pakistan does not support terrorist groups.
I have known Mr. Qureshi for a long time. All I can say is he lives in cuckoo land. Did he not see yesterday's television coverage across the subcontinent of every Kashmiri leader worth his name who has a political base in Delhi, meeting with the Prime Minister? They're really smiling at each other and they're going back satisfied with the talks because we have promised to work with them to have elections soon in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, what that proves is the elected leaders in Jammu and Kashmir want to have a peaceful resolution with India, even on a complex matter like Article 370, where both sides have agreed to decide to abide by the verdict of the Supreme Court of India, which means there is trust on both sides on the constitutional functioning of India's Supreme Court. I'm not sure the Pakistanis can say that on their side. Secondly, coming to what Mr. Qureshi has to say, I mean, he should ask himself that why is it that President Biden has not lifted the phone and spoken to his boss? Why is it that every visitor from outside comes and meets General Bajwa and not the the Prime Minister? I mean, Imran Khan, I have known since 1982, when the Indian team led by Sunil Gavaskar went to Pakistan. And I was told at a party I hosted that Imran Khan had very clearly said, cricket aside, there can be no peace with Kashmir, with India, till the Kashmir issue is settled, to my satisfaction. Now, this is 1982. He has not changed. And I think this is the first time I have seen in my life, and I have dealt with successive Pakistan governments since Zia-ul Haq. I have never seen an occasion when the military leaves the elected side of the government and the Prime Minister deals with us. The second point is we should remember that the military under Pervez Musharraf had very detailed back-channel negotiations with my colleague Sati Lamba. I was involved, so I'm not at liberty to say what happened. But I would say this, that what was achieved was undermined by General Kayani. So, you know, when Sushant says you have to be careful, my problem is this tussle between the military and the elected representatives. And by and large, elected representatives like Nawaz Sharif have been reasonable people. I'm afraid I can't say the same about Imran Khan. You know, he told when in one particular bowling spell, when he took a lot of wickets, my Pakistani commentator friend told him, you know, when you bowl, I saw you bowl against the MCC. It was nothing like the fire you're bowling with in India. And you know what was Imran's reply to my Pakistani friends? Whenever I play against the Indians, I don't treat it as a cricket match. I think of Kashmir and treat it as a jihad. This I have written about earlier, 1982, when no one in the world spoke of Kashmir.
Shuja Nawaz, I mean, you've written both extensively on the military-civilian relationship. How do you see that currently in India-Pakistan relations?
Well, first of all, I think one has to recognize the reality of the unequal relationship that exists historically between the Pakistani military and the civilian establishment. I call it a misalliance. It's an unequal marriage. But in this particular case, there appears to be much more of a collusion, much more of a discussion, much more of an exchange of views. But that doesn't detract from the fact that it remains an unequal relationship. And that is because the political system hasn't yet produced the kind of depth of analysis and knowledge and experience that is necessary to be able to take on a powerful institution like the military, which is disciplined, which is organized, and which has maintained a continuity, not just in Pakistan, but elsewhere too. I mean, I live in America and I've been here since '72. And the US military has a way of dealing with government, whether it's the president or Congress, that is very sophisticated, that protects their interests. So unless the civilian side in Pakistan can show that it is in command of the situation, that it has a clear vision and that it is governing effectively, it will always be an imbalanced relationship.
One of your fans is watching you, Parth, who says, "Wow, my favorite Sushant Sareen." That's woken you up. What does India do if nothing is changing across the border in Pakistan, at least? How do we handle the situation?
You know, Amitabh, frankly, I don't see why we need to really start doing something. And I think one of the big failures of Indian policy on Pakistan is this constant quest of wanting to do something, that nothing is happening, we need to do something. Sometimes you need to just let things be. Your immediate problem or your foreseeable future, your challenges from Pakistan are going to be security related primarily. Frankly, on the economic front, there is virtually nothing worthwhile that Pakistan brings onto the table for us. If you look at the trade figures, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are far, far, far more important than what Pakistan is. So economically, it has nothing to offer. In terms of connectivity, what does it connect us to? And are we going to trust or have the faith that if our energy security depends on pipelines running from Pakistan, is that even something even remotely sensible for us to do? I don't think so. So I don't see how there is anything positive going forward in this relationship. So at the security level, I think you need to try and protect yourself to the extent you want to have a dialogue. For example, this current kind of back channel to cool things down, to keep things calm. If to whatever extent that works, you can go ahead with it. But beyond that, this constant quest that, okay, if nothing is happening, let's call the Pakistanis over. If nothing is happening, why don't I drop in Lahore and, just try and start something? If nothing is happening, why don't we, extend the hand of friendship? And you know how it's all turned out. There is this big thing that, there was this back channel operating between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Musharraf. Frankly, I'm not even sure if that was a sellable proposition. And what were they trying to sell? They were not trying to settle the thing. They were trying to manage it, and manage it in a way. I think there would have been a huge furor in India the moment it came onto the public platform, and also in Pakistan. And the proof of the pudding being in the eating, the moment Musharraf went, his successor sabotaged the entire thing. They had no use for it. In fact, in 2007, senior People's Party members who I was speaking to, because I happened to be in Pakistan at that point of time, senior members of the People's Party were very emphatic that whatever Musharraf has decided, they are not bound by it. So this constant thing that one, as Mr. Shuja Nawaz is saying, there is this, this good cop, bad cop. Sometimes the military plays the bad cop to a politician's good cop. This time the politician is playing the bad cop to the military's good cop. So one is those games which go on. The second is that whoever decides something, everybody else pulls his legs down. So how do you deal with an entity like this? How do you take anything forward? How do you know that what has been promised to you, or what assurances have been given to you, are worth anything at all? That they are not going to be reneged upon the moment somebody returns. So in a situation like that, up to my mind, all we should do is make sure that our security grids are proper, make sure that our deterrence posture works, make sure that we have the capabilities of doing certain things in case we need to retaliate to any audacious terrorist attack or any audacious action from the Pakistani side, and not back down. And I think one good thing which the Modi government has done is that it has shown that it can be extremely unpredictable rather. And that unpredictability, I think, is a new factor it has inserted into the security dynamic, which to my mind is not something entirely bad, because it keeps the Pakistanis guessing on what the Indian reaction will be. Unlike the last 30 years, when for every attack, either we had some of Mr. Parthasarathy's colleagues threaten Pakistan by threatening to retaliate, but never actually retaliating, or we simply turned the other cheek. Agli bari mat karna, fir dekhna. I think that thing has stopped, hopefully, for the future. And I think that is a good thing going forward. But we need to develop certain capabilities much more than what we have right now.
Mr. Shuja Nawaz, I'll come to you. Mr. Shuja Nawaz, you want to respond to what Sushant?
Yes. I can understand what Sushant is saying, but I think it's a very narrow and very unidimensional view of the relationship. It should not be seen purely from a military point of view and hostilities with attack and counterattack on the military side. Both leaders need to do something about the economy. Both leaders are facing an enormous problem of creating new jobs. India needs 12 to 15 million new jobs every year, and it's been going in deficit. Pakistan needs more than 1 million new jobs every year, and it has been losing jobs. I don't see cross-border trade or transit agreements becoming a burden for either country. It creates codependency, and if the Germans can get their oil and gas from Russia, why can't India and Pakistan rely on energy from Central Asia that benefits Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India? This is the point I think that needs to be addressed, and connectivity between the two countries will create opportunities for businesses to deal with each other across a common border, which is economics 101. And we seem to be ignoring that. That will benefit people on both sides. That will create the jobs. That will create the growth that both need in order to stay ahead of the population curve. So Kashmir will always be there. But for once, I think Musharraf probably had a good idea that it's probably best to let Kashmir come to its own solution over time and see if we can find a way of opening other channels. This is my response. I think just looking at it purely from military operations or hostility on that front restricts your ability to serve your own people.
Sure, nobody's saying that the trade should not take place, connectivity should not. I'll come to you, Sushant. Ambassador Parthasarathy, you wanted to say something.
Well, I think there is a point which he made. I agree with Sushant that the Modi prime ministership has changed things. He's not the first. I have been in Pakistan when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, and she knew how to deal with matters pertaining to Pakistan. And also, I think the Manmohan Singh initiative went well. It fell through, and things went for the worse. But at least the effort was made. My point is, you cannot wish away your neighbors. So you have to keep channels of communication, but also you need to let the other party know that the response will be severe for terrorism. I've had enough of terrorism. I've been talking to the Pakistanis about terrorism from the late 1970s, and things only keep getting worse. Now, for the first time, we are doing it with the military, and the military has signed on the agreement. It was signed by the two DGMOs for there to be no incidents across the line of control. And that agreement has gone on so far. So I personally believe that I have a lot of friends in Pakistan, that we have no conflict with the people of Pakistan. And there needs to be an outreach on both sides. It has benefited both. I've seen the Muhajirs in Karachi change up, 180 degrees when they started visiting their relatives in India. So I'm talking on the basis of personal things, and I'm too old to try and be macho. The fact of the matter is that we have a difficult neighbor. You deal with dimensions that you can deal with. And for a long time, I have favored what has now emerged is a channel of communications with their military and ISI. And that should continue, whatever happens. If things go out of hand and they revert to terrorism, they know that Mr. Modi is not going to react so softly as in the past. That's a reality they know. So we move ahead in that direction. But to become churlish and say, I will not talk to a neighbor, I don't like his face, that I'm afraid is not diplomacy. That's not how the systems function. And therefore, the channel of communication should continue. No concession or no impression should be given to Pakistan that it can continue with terrorism, that even their terrorist leaders may not feel safe in their own homes. That, I think, is a capability I have said we should have to respond in kind to every terrorist attack on India. I'm not any qualms on that. But nations keep in touch even in wars. You've seen that amidst tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States. That is happening between the United States and China. To pretend that the Pakistanis don't exist, you're not going to make any concessions to them by talking to them. But they know what you stand for. And also this bye-bye business is overdone with Pakistan. Behave maturely. Deal with them correctly. But deal with them in a manner which benefits both. And I think you leave it to the diplomats and the politicians in the BJP, and certainly the military. They find their way. I mean, I have seen military officers in India quite happy to respond with their counterparts. The navies and the air force have channels of communication. The DGMO speak to each other every week. I don't think many people know that. That has to continue. You can't wish away a neighbor, but you can break his back if he gets out of hand.
Sushant, Afghanistan, what's happening there in terms of the withdrawal of the US?
Can I just, before you ask a question,
go ahead.
Okay, so 4 points. Let me first paraphrase what a former DG ISPR said. Silence is also an expression. So in a sense, not having this tamasha of a dialogue is also a form of diplomacy. That does not mean that I'm advocating closing or shutting down all lines or channels of communication. Yes, channels of communication must continue, but that the rest of the tamasha which goes on, I'm deadly opposed to it because it leads to nothing. Number one. Number two, it's not often that I disagree with Ambassador Parthasarathy, but I must disagree with him on when he says that we have no conflict with the people of Pakistan. We keep saying this, but what is the evidence we have to back this up with? Is there any empirical evidence which tells us that no, the people of both countries are overflowing with love for each other? But it is, this normal conspiracy theory that the government and the politicians make us fight. I find that a very ridiculous argument when that is made. I'm sure it's not Mr. Parthasarathy's argument, but I disagree with him when he says that we have no conflict with the people. I think if you start asking the Pakistani people what they think of India, Indians and Hindus, you will get your answer from them. Number three, this whole thing that we have built up, that we should talk, something will come out when we talk to the Pakistani military and the Pakistani deep state. I don't think anything will come out. Yes, we can talk to them. There's no harm in talking to them. It's like part of that lines of communication thing which I talk about. But to expect that, the Pakistani army or the Pakistani deep state establishment is going to be so, filled with love for their Indian counterparts that, that they will agree to many things. That's not going to happen. They tried it. The Americans tried it. What have the Americans got in the last 20 years from the Pakistan army? Only got 2,500 of their soldiers killed. And the double games which the Pakistanis played. Now, the thing I'm trying to say is that the Pakistani military establishment has a certain concept of what their national security and national interest is. That is at complete variance with what India's national security and national interest is. And there is no meeting ground out there. Tactical level adjustments, of course, will happen, like is happening right now. But beyond that, to expect that there will be some big bang solution between the two countries, I don't see that happen. And finally, I have reached this point. Mr. Nawaz doesn't know me, so maybe he thinks this is a very unidimensional thing I'm taking. Fortunately, unfortunately, sometimes to my eternal regret, I was one of those who actually believed that peace between India and Pakistan was possible. In fact, I had a run-in with Ambassador Parthasarathy at one point of time on this particular issue, and he scolded me also. But the fact of the matter is that it's through a process of studying Pakistan for the last quarter century that I've reached the conclusion that nothing else will work. On this whole economic thing, yes, we need to develop our economy. Yes, we need fast growth. But it has no linkage with what happens with Pakistan. None whatsoever. In the last almost 30 years now, since 1990, when we undertook the economic reforms, please compare the trajectory of India's economy and Pakistan's economy. It was sensible economic policies which lead to growth in India, not voodoo economics and not relations with Pakistan. Our relations with Pakistan have gone downhill since 1990. We've been on the verge of war on at least a couple of times. And yet our economy has only grown, right? If in the last couple of years, it's because of certain wrong policies and certain adjustments that our economy seems to be slagging. You fix that, your economy will boom. And finally, on this whole connectivity business, a former colleague of Ambassador Parthasarathy, who was one of his predecessors in Islamabad, has told me this, that a former president of Pakistan, Farooq Ligari, had openly said in 95-96 in his meetings with the High Commissioner at that point of time, that as far as he was concerned, this pipeline proposal would give the Pakistanis, they'll be able to hold India's energy security by the scruff of their neck. Now, should I not be concerned that every second day, and given the Pakistani disingenuity, they will say, someday they will say somebody has sabotaged it. For 2 days, gas supplies are stopped. For 2 days, petroleum supplies are stopped. There will be, what are the penalties which will be imposed on them? Every third day, they will do this. The kind of uncertainty that comes in with that kind of a procedure that goes on with the Pakistanis, and they are known to do this kind of a thing. So how will I ever trust my energy security in Pakistani hands? I don't see any sensible policymaker in India accept that.
Right. Ambassador, just going to the west of Pakistan now, the situation in Afghanistan and what's happening there. Both Ghani and Abdullah are meeting President Biden and other officials. But do you see Pakistan, how do you see Pakistan playing the game in Afghanistan, and what should India be doing?
Pakistan is playing a double game, pretending to be good guys, wanting a good solution, and then winking at the Taliban and letting them go riot. I think the Americans have read through that. And I think that is going to continue. My reading is that the Taliban will run into resistance mainly in the non-Pashtun areas and as they proceed towards the direction of Kabul. But otherwise, a large part of Afghanistan is going into Taliban hands. The way the Americans have trained the Afghan army is not to fight this sort of battle. I mean, they're sort of they're acting as special forces for the attacks on units here and there. They have not been trained to be an anti-insurgency force. So I think we have to bear that in mind. And it's going to be a tough going there. But I have not lost, I think, as I said, in non-Pashtun areas, especially when they are Tajik and the Tajiks and the Hazaras together who hate the Taliban, things will be tough. The capital remains to be seen, but they will resist. Let us see how this plays out. But in the meantime, I'm afraid Pakistan is going to be exposed. The Taliban cannot be doing all that it is doing, operating out of Pakistani soil without Pakistani assistance. So if they intend to play this for the long, I think, as I said, the Taliban will take large control of large parts of Afghanistan, but not necessarily many areas which matter, which have always been hostile to them. Taliban is a purely Pashtun organization. The Pashtuns are 42% of the population. Tajiks and Hazaras together will offer very strong resistance. They did so during the time of Ahmad Shah Massoud, and they seem to be picking up the right commanders to do so now.
Shuja Nawaz, if you want to respond to any of the points made earlier, and also want to get your comments on Afghanistan and how you see that playing out in terms of Pakistan having the upper hand, so as to speak. But if you push America to that extent, and since there's a withdrawal of troops, you don't need logistic lines, not giving bases anyway, at least openly or publicly. So can America put more pressure on Afghanistan, I beg your pardon, on Pakistan, once the withdrawal is done?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Very briefly, just to respond to something that Sushant said, and yes, we haven't worked together. I've worked with his colleagues at the ORF for many years, but we haven't met or talked. So yes, maybe I don't know him, but I can hear what he's saying. I, as opposed to him, am an optimist. I believe that there are opportunities for countries to do better than they're doing, and nobody is talking of an entente cordiale. I think we're all aiming for some kind of an entente, so that there is a cessation of hostilities. And just one figure should help him understand the economics behind it. If both India and Pakistan go back to the same level of trade in percentage terms of the areas that are now India and now Pakistan that occurred at the time of independence in 1947, today the trade in Pakistan, between India and Pakistan, would be somewhere between 40 and 100 billion a year. That kind of trade creates dependencies, but also creates advantages for both countries. And that is really what benefits the people. And I've traveled extensively in India and in Pakistan, and I know that there is medium-scale businesses, a large quantum of them, that are prepared and willing and able to trade across the border, and in fact do trade illegally across the border when there's an opportunity. So there is support for that kind of activity if only the politicians get their act together. Regarding Afghanistan, I think one has to be careful about painting things too starkly. I go back to something that General Kiani once said, that if Kabul falls to the Taliban, it'll be bad for Afghanistan, it'll be worse for Pakistan. And I think there's some truth to that, because the moment you have an emirate in Kabul controlling Afghanistan and predominantly the border with Pakistan, their next target is going to be Pakistan. And they have allies already in the militant Islamic parties in the Punjab. They have allies in the Tehreek-e-Taliban of Pakistan who have pledged allegiance to the Taliban leadership over time. And the TTP in itself has been a kind of subcontractor to Al-Qaeda. So all these forces are likely to threaten Pakistan, and I don't think that is in Pakistan's interest. So whatever happens, I think this is a threat to Pakistan if the Taliban take Kabul. And Ambassador Parthasarathy knows that I like history. He's lived history as a diplomat, particularly knows Afghanistan well. Remember what happened on the night of September 26th, morning of September 27, 1996. When the Taliban came onto the outer walls of Kabul, all the people that you've mentioned, the famous Tajik and the other warlords from the northeast, they all decamped from Kabul without a fight. That's the kind of implosion that occurs when you don't have a kind of national consensus and cohesion, which unfortunately hasn't yet emerged in Afghanistan. I still believe that and the Americans got it wrong, I still believe that if instead of creating a strong center, the Americans had allowed the previous system of Afghanistan with its regional centers of power and a weak center in Kabul, that they would have stuck together much more cohesively, and you wouldn't have had the situation that you have now. I think at the moment the situation is irretrievable. The Afghan army is far too large, 330,000 plus. They can't afford to maintain it without American support. And the Americans have now said that if there is an unelected government that they don't recognize in Kabul, that they will stop supporting Afghanistan. And its entire budget is being supported by grants from the world outside. So it's going to be bad for Pakistan, for Afghanistan, and for the region.
Sushant, quickly, I mean, I've gone way over time. If you want to take on Afghanistan.
Okay, but I have to respond to something Mr. Nawaz said. And very, very quickly. See, number one, the comparisons which he talks about, just at the time of partition, almost 70% of the bilateral trade was between India and Pakistan. Their bilateral trade was almost 70% of their total trade. But those comparisons are of past history. They don't work anymore. There have been complete disengagement and decoupling of the economies. So I don't see how those things can be revived. Number one. Number two, there's enough evidence from worldwide that just because two countries trade with each other and have deep economic stakes does not necessarily mean that they will do business, they will have peace between them. In fact, there is enough evidence that there actually becomes a reason for war between countries. But to come back to Afghanistan, very quickly, number one, I'm not very sure if the Americans care what goes down in Afghanistan anymore. The haste with which they are leaving and all the noises which they are making is probably for public consumption. But I don't see them, really being bothered about what's happening. And if push comes to shove, they'll even deal with the Taliban. On the Pakistanis being very concerned, it's people like Mr. Nawaz and some of the others who are looking at it from a very rational perspective, who think that this will, bite back on Pakistan and won't be good for Pakistan. But I wouldn't take somebody like Kiani or any of the other generals seriously, because while they said what they said, that they didn't want the Taliban capturing Kabul or capturing Afghanistan, they did everything to facilitate that particular capture of Afghanistan. They have funded the Taliban war effort. They have given them men, material, sanctuary, everything they have done. So for them to turn around and say, but we don't want you to win, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I think all those denials are meant for public consumption and for diplomatic consumption. I don't think, I think the Pakistanis actually think that if the Taliban take over, they will be able to pacify Afghanistan, and all those grand dreams which the Pakistanis have of CPEC and then connectivity to Central Asia, all of that will come to fruition if the Taliban are able to establish their control. And they think the Taliban will be so beholden to the Pakistanis that they will give them whatever they want. There will be that odd issue on which there will be discord. But other than that, the larger strategic purpose of Pakistan will be served. I think that's the calculation. Now, whether that calculation comes true or not is another matter. Personally, I think given the kind of momentum which the Taliban have, I would again counsel everybody in India to listen to what Mr. Nawaz said, because I've been talking about this also, that in 1996, there was no battle for Kabul. Kabul fell to the Taliban without a shot being fired, because the people who were holding Kabul decamped. They left Kabul and the Taliban simply walked in. I'm not sure if things will be any different this time, number one. Number two, I'm not sure there is any confidence in the ANA, which is why you have all kinds of militias now coming about. I don't think the militias will be able to hold on or keep the Taliban at bay. So I think there'll be massacres, there'll be reprisals, there'll be all sorts of bloodshed in Afghanistan going forward. But I'm not sure that if this will be a very long-lasting affair, unless something happens like what happened in the Jalalabad fight, and the Afghan National Army is able to inflict certain serious reverses on the Taliban. I think it's game, set, and match for Taliban. Could take a couple of months, could take a little longer, but I think that's the direction in which things are headed.
Game, set, and match to the Taliban. Sushant, Sareen, feels I could go on and on, but you were talking about calculations. My calculations for the length of this program have doubled, and the people whose questions I haven't been able to get through. I thought we could continue this discussion. Sushant, Sareen, thank you so much for giving us time. I know you stepped out of a meeting at ORF to come on the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
And Shuja Nawaz, appreciate your time early morning there in Washington as well. Thank you for appearing on StratNews again.
Thank you as always. A lively discussion.
Extremely lively, and contributing to that, Ambassador Parthasarathy, thank you for appearing on StratNews after a long time.
I enjoy an evening with Sushant.
I think all the viewers do there too. There is one suggestion. I can't really find it right now, Sushant, to put it up on the screen. Let me just see. Take another 30 seconds. Yeah. Sai, who says, Sushant sir should be sent as a political appointee to Pakistan. Anyway, I'll leave it.
You want relations to get worse than what they already are.
I thank all our panelists and all our viewers and people who are participating. Thank you so much. Have a good evening and a good day to you, Mr. Nawaz Shuja as well. Just a reminder to all of you, you can contribute to our kind of journalism. There's a link in the descriptor on YouTube. If you want to give us some financial support, do follow us social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as for the latest news and analysis from an Indian perspective. You've been watching Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.